And joining us now is a guy that hopes to be able to call games here sometime soon because that's what he does, and he does extremely well. He is the voice of the LSU Tigers, Chris Blair. Chris, thanks for the time. We appreciate it, and I hope you're well in these strange times.
Absolutely, Ken. Thanks for having me on. I'm actually enjoying a couple of days in the North Georgia mountains, about 45 miles north of Atlanta. And I got to tell you, this 75 degrees, a low temperature of like 64 in the morning has been a nice little relief. But soon, as you said, we hope we get back down to Baton Rouge here shortly and keep gearing up for what will be a football season starting in late September. That's the hope.
All right, so that's the on-the-record line. The off-the-record line is that Chris is spying. He's near Athens, and he is on a reconnaissance mission for Coach O for the SEC championship game, right?
Yes, exactly. That's you figured it out, and there's no need for me to lie. Although at the moment I am a good ways away from Sanford Stadium, but boy, it's just – everybody's talking about it. They have been talking about it. Ken, I know you're talking about it everywhere you go. Are we going to play football? And it's kind of everybody's refreshing social media about every 30 seconds, every minute or so to see what the latest is. And, over the last 10 plus days, things are changing at a very rapid speed. So, I am favorable for the way the SEC has handled it up to this point. And, I've got to give kudos to the ACC and the Big 12 as well. I think they all three feel like decisions are still yet to be made. However, they're gonna use time on their side before making, a hard and fast decision. And I still think we have a window of time to do that. And obviously everybody who's optimistic hopes that we're going to be able to play some sort of football season here in 2020.
Ultimately, it's not about whether they play or not. Of course, that's what everybody wants to get to. But it's about how you get there to make that determination. And to sit here and watch people be judgmental about making decisions either to play or not to play is a little bit much. I just think you give them every opportunity to try to make it happen, and at such time as the time arriving that it cannot happen, then you cancel it. I'm fully understanding of that, fully cognizant of what's transpiring, and totally supportive of what the SEC is trying to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's some decisions. I think we all live in a world where we want what we want and we want it now. And then there's certain sports, and as we saw in the last week, certain conferences that feel like now's the time to make the decision, and they made the decision to scrap the fall season. They used the term postponement. I think that creates a whole other set of challenges and circumstances if you try to put on a spring football season. I think we could spend the next hour and a half talking about what those challenges are, but I think everybody understands that. And obviously those in the leadership position, not only in the conference offices and conference commissioners, but also athletic directors and university presidents and coaches and everybody that's involved in college athletics understands some decisions could be made now. Some other decisions, because of the impact they have, may have to come later. And I think it's a fool's game to simply criticize people for A, making the decision, or B, taking the time before they make that decision. So I think it's just in our nature to want to know something is going to be firm, something's in concrete. And unfortunately, if there's something we've all learned from what we've been going through over the last 5 months plus, that world, at least for the time being, just doesn't exist.
No, it certainly doesn't. And I certainly respect those that have already made decisions not to play in the fall, whether I agree or disagree. I understand it. And there has to be a level of understanding and respect, which seems to be lacking on many fronts right now in society as a whole. Chris Blair with us, the voice of the LSU Tigers. All right, so as you look ahead of the season, the preseason rankings, of course, we've seen a couple. LSU fifth, the highest we've seen of the Tigers, certainly top 10 unquestionably. That's the good news. The bad news is 5 of the top 11 teams are SEC teams. What else is new, right?
Exactly. It's always fun. I think fans get, you hunger so long for football, and then the preseason polls come out, and that, of course, automatically begins the debate on who should be 1, who should be 8. Is this team a top 10 team? But, when you look at, for the most part, I've always said with polls, especially preseason polls, Ken, you take the top 15, and at any given moment you could switch them around. Obviously the top 5 typically have reasons that they're in the top 5, but top to bottom, there's so many variables that go into it that it's something that we can all talk about. But there's no surprise at all that you have that number of SEC teams that are certainly in that top 15, top 10 bubble. It's just the emphasis is put on it. Coaches are held to a high standard. They go out and recruit the top student athletes in the country for those respective sports. So that's no surprise. And, again, it's kind of what you hear all the SEC coaches say. It's just another year in the SEC. That doesn't come as a surprise to anybody.
Despite the fact that LSU lost so many players to the NFL, they're still very talented. This is a team that unquestionably is top 10 and will be in the conversation and will have a chance to compete for a national championship again. As you look at this team right now at this particular point in time on August the 14th, what might be your biggest concern regarding specific positions or depth or where you might have to see more than what people anticipate?
To your first point, you get asked a lot, and especially following the season in 2019, that you look at all the skill players that eventually went high in the draft of the NFL and that LSU would have a major drop-off. But to believe that would totally suspend what Ed Orgeron has been doing for 3+ years now, which is building an organization with a solid foundation that basically replaces great players with great players. When you talk about the Alabamas of the world, you talk about what Dabo Swinney's done at Clemson, they've had that now for a number of years. So there's no question that regardless of how many Alabama or Clemson send into the NFL, Ohio State also in that group, that they're going to have a chance to be right at the top of the college football world once again. And I think that's the design that Ed had, and that's the work that's been put in since his time taking over the program. For those who simply think, well, they had Joe Burrow, they had Justin Jefferson, the list goes on and on, there's going to be a major drop-off, and you're just not paying attention to the talent. And more importantly, Ken, not just the talent, because of the organization, the development of that talent with this incredible staff, that, yes, they're going to be in the mix not only this year but for many, many years to come. My biggest question mark when it comes to the offense, obviously, Joe Burrow, replacing a guy like that he's a generational quarterback. There's no question. But for me, as a unit offensively, and I talked to Steve Ensminger earlier this week, and I made this assessment, and he agreed with me 100%, that the two big keys, I think, for the offense, because it's going to continue to stay the same, the philosophy is going to be the same, they're going to use the same principles they used a year ago. You've got a great receiver core coming back, led by a Biletnikoff winner and Jamar Chase. Terrace Marshall is back. Racey McMath is going to be there. Jeray Jenkins. And the wide receivers are going to be good. But if you look at the tight end hybrid position last year and what Clyde Edwards-Helaire did at running back to replace Thaddeus Moss and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you look back at the games where they made plays that either kept the momentum going for LSU when they needed that play, and in some cases, they took the momentum back by plays that they made. And now you've got a young kid like Eric Gilbert coming in. He was recently named the Gatorade High School Player of the Year. And all indications are he's going to be an impact player immediately. He's just got that kind of skill set, that kind of work ethic. But it is going to be his first year as a true freshman as that tight end. He's the one they think is going to replace Thaddeus Moss. At running back, you've got a room full of great talent. Obviously with, Ty Davis-Price, who we saw flashes of last year. John Emery we saw flashes of last year. And then the job Chris Curry did that kind of took everybody surprise, in the postseason when he had to fill in for an injured Clyde Edwards-Helaire against Oklahoma. So, I think those two positions offensively, you hope you can continue to have the type of play there that you can count on because everybody's going to try to stop that receiving core, and there's not an easy answer to stopping them. But when you've got to cover, 5-6 weapons out of the backfield and along the line of scrimmage that can catch a football, it makes things very challenging for defenses. And I think real quickly on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be interesting to me to see how this linebacker core comes in. You've got some guys who are returning, obviously, that had big moments last year. You're pretty good at the corner position. You've got some returners at safety. And I think they've got more depth defensively going into the year on paper than they've had up front for a long time. But I think they're going to have to really find out where is that one or two star linebacker because of the guys that obviously last year with Patrick Queen, Jacob Phillips, and Caleb Von Chasson that have moved on to the next level. But they've always been able to find good linebackers, so I don't know that that's something you need to hit the panic button on.
Visiting with Chris Blair, voice of the LSU Tigers, 260-1061 to join us. People always ask about newcomers. Are there any real talented freshmen, incoming freshmen, that actually will be part of the rotation, will play as true freshmen? The answer is yes. That's going to happen. It's a matter of who and how many. Any names that you might be able to impart to people that you've been told about or have observed in any way, shape, or form?
You know, I think it's interesting because I asked Steve Ensminger about this. I asked Mickey Joseph, the wide receivers coach, about this. And there's a couple of positions on both offense and defense where you do have enough returners that some of the newcomers, are going to get their opportunities. But I think at the biggest position for a newcomer that truly can make an impact and more specifically probably has to be able to make an impact is who I mentioned earlier, and Eric Gilbert. Jamal Pettigrew, put his name in the transfer portal. He's now going on to McNeese State, which we wish him nothing but the very best. But that's a very important part to this offense. And you're going to be putting a pretty good load on the shoulders of a true freshman in Eric Gilbert. And, outside of him, I don't know who else you go to. And, so to me, talking to people around the program, they've had nothing but great things to say, and we're all kind of excited to see his prowess and his skill set on display. When you look around the rest of the team, I think there's going to be ample opportunity for youngsters to get their time. But if there's one thing Coach O has been pretty clear on is, he's a trust guy. He wants to be around a staff that he trusts. He wants to be around players he can trust inside the game between the lines. And so many times last year we would talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire and then the talented running backs behind him. And you started to hear some fans, why aren't we seeing John Emery more on display? Why aren't we seeing Ty Davis-Price more on display? And, O kept coming back saying, all the things we ask a running back to do, pass protection, obviously running the football, catching the football in the passing game, we trust Clyde. He's shown us what he can do. And I'm not sure if, again, they don't have a ton of options at that tight end position. But other than that, across the board, when you take a look at the two deep, you've got some guys who had some significant minutes last year in a backup role. So there's a whole list of great talented players, obviously, that came in the recruiting class. But without question, I think Eric Gilbert's the one that we're all going to see and talk about sooner than anybody else.
Want to ask you about basketball and baseball, which look pretty good too. But first, a comment on Dee Bro. What an institution she has been at LSU. And she's just one of the nicest people, and she's done a great job not only of producing a national level program, but of promoting that sport and that program as well. Just a thought about Dee Bro and what she's meant to LSU.
An absolute ball of energy. That is, Ken, as you know, your time around her, I feel privileged to be around her, day to day there on campus, beyond the success and, as you pointed out, what she's done to build a gymnastics power and really raise gymnastics as a whole in this country, and certainly collegiate gymnastics. And, one of the things that I think that is probably the biggest legacy that Coach Bro will have is the impact, as you said, on LSU and her love for Louisiana State University and her Fighting Tigers. And, the news came out, obviously took a lot of people by surprise, because you just never imagine there's a time where Dee Bro is not going to be the head coach of LSU gymnastics. But they immediately followed that with, she is still going to be part of the athletic department, part of the university, and nobody can get you fired up about any sport or any sporting event better than D.D. Bro, whether she's whipping them into a frenzy, 13,000 plus inside the Maravich Center for a gymnastics meet, or she's in the student section, rooting on Will Wade and the Tigers, or she's at the box with Paul Maneri. I mean, when she shows up, you better be ready to go at it 110%. And the fact that she's going to still be part of LSU and the athletic department is the best news that we all got. But, she put in a lot of work and had to drag a lot of people to build what she built there. So I hope she gets to enjoy some of her downtime with her family. But I'm glad to know she's going to be around.
And, of course, it was disappointing to see the softball season get interrupted. Beth Tarina does such a great job, and she had another really good team. Just nothing you can do about it, but she's done a consistently outstanding job.
No, absolutely. I mean, she's top-notch. Again, understanding the great facility she has at Tiger Park and how that can benefit the program, the athletic department, and the university. And you're right. I mean, they were certainly poised. Even early in that season, everybody knew they were poised to make a run to Oklahoma. And she may have had top to bottom one of her most talented teams ever. That was a mix of solid talent, but a lot of experience. So it was obviously heartbreaking for her and the staff, and certainly the student athletes. And you hated to see it. And, talking to a lot of the coaches, Ken, it certainly was a bitter pill to have to swallow. But a lot of them said, the silver lining in this all is when moving forward, whenever that day comes, that the student athlete got a hard lesson on nothing is guaranteed. It's something coaches say all the time. You got to put the work in to get what you want, and nothing is guaranteed. Success is not guaranteed. Wins aren't guaranteed. And, at some point we all kind of think that is a cliche. We hear it so often. But I think especially I heard Paul Maneri talk about that. I heard Beth talk about that now moving forward, this generation of student athletes and the student athletes who will be coming up for the next couple of years who are currently playing in high school, whose seasons also were cut short, will understand you can't take a day off, you can't take a rep off because nothing is guaranteed. And I think LSU softball with Beth Tarina at the head is going to be nothing but good for as long as she wants to be the coach.
You mentioned my longtime friend Paul Maneri, and, of course, he met the media today, and that's another season that was interrupted, and they had really good pitching, to say the least. But the good news is they're going to have a ton of talent coming back now next year. So, again, this will be a really good team in 2021. But, again, much like football, most of the best teams in the country reside in the SEC. It's such a great baseball league.
It really is. I mean, it is the cream of the crop. It's funny because those outside the SEC always make fun of us that we constantly talk about the power top and bottom of the Southeastern Conference. And while there are some great programs all over the country, coast to coast, and there are certain conferences that are maybe more powerful in a certain sport than others, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, when you look at SEC baseball, you look at the fan support, you look at the facilities, you look at the players. I mean, every year there's a list as long as your arm that every coach in this league is watching the major league draft to determine who he's got coming and who's going to forego college and go to the professional ranks. That's just standard operating procedure for all SEC programs. And that, to me, speaks volumes as to how powerful that sport is and how powerful the SEC is. And I got a chance to catch some of Paul's stuff earlier today up here in Georgia. And, Paul said the same thing that, a lot of us felt, which was that baseball team with the staff it had, newcomers in the field and positions, Paul doing what he does every year, which is tinkering with that lineup to find the right order. They were kind of on schedule where they thought they would be when the season had shut down. And, being around 5 years now and knowing fans who have followed LSU baseball since Skip Bertman put them on the map and built that juggernaut, that's kind of what everybody felt like. And, again, just disappointing, but without question, the number of guys coming back, some of the adjustments, the NCAA wisely came out early, shockingly, of course, came out early and made some of those changes to make it possible to manage a college baseball roster with difficulties as it is in any year. Now you've given the challenges going into next year. The fact that they made some adjustments there means that I think college baseball for the teams who come back, and certainly SEC baseball next year, it is going to be a fight to the finish.
Finally, when it comes to basketball, Will Wade, of course, everybody has been waiting to see if the shoe drops with regard to the NCAA. That has not happened yet. We don't know what's going to transpire. The documentary came out. We heard the voice, but no new news. So everybody sits and waits on that. Meanwhile, all he's done is gone out and put together a heck of a recruiting class, got a big man transfer, and then got a real boost as well when not one, not two, but all three guys who had put their names in the draft portal pulled out, and they're coming back. So this looks like, barring any unforeseen developments and the ability to play, that this will be a very good LSU basketball team this coming season.
Yeah, the big three coming back was, again, not the biggest surprise, but it was just nice to see that it was going to happen. Because, the job Will and his staff have done since he took over really has been remarkable. I mean, you almost forget sometimes, it's been 3 years, 3 seasons, and now everybody is expecting each year to be better and better, more talented. And for me, when you look at this roster as we stand here today, it's going to be the first time since Will Wade has been the head coach that he's not only got great talent in the positions at the 4, at the 5, certainly in the backcourt that he wants to play his style of basketball, but now he's starting to have some depth. He doesn't have one point guard. He doesn't have one true 5 in the lineup. He's got a couple of guys that, are super talented that are going to be able to play in those roles. And when I look at that roster, if you know anything about college basketball and what it takes to be consistently a winner and what it takes to compete for championships, obviously at the conference level, and to make a run in the NCAA tournament, Will Wade is building that product at LSU. And, looking at it now, if this is the type of team we can expect from a talent standpoint, depth standpoint, year in and year out, this is a program to be contended with by every other league, certainly the SEC, and the big powers of college basketball once March rolls around. So I'm excited about basketball. I really am, and I think it's going to be an exciting brand to watch. And based on what he's done so far, really kind of piecemealing things together to make it fit. I think this is the first year going into the 2020 campaign that now he can. The same way I think Paul Maneri is a genius, the way he pushes buttons, pushes levers, changes things here. That really wasn't affordability for Will Wade the last 3+ seasons, whereas now I think you're going to be able to see that. And from an X's and O's guy, just being around him in practice, on trips, the film study, the breakdown of games that he does, now that he's got pieces he can put on that chessboard and put them in the position he wants to put them in, will make all the difference in the world for the success of the LSU Tigers on the basketball court.
Well, providing competitions take place, and we surely hope that happens, it's going to be a really fun year for LSU athletics, to say the least, based upon everything we mentioned here this evening. And you'll be able to hear Chris make those calls. Take care of my buddy John Brady. Try to keep him under wraps as much as you can. He's a good man and does a great job in analyzing basketball for you. Chris, listen, enjoy the rest of your time off, and hopefully we'll hear you calling some games very soon.
Man, I'm hoping for it, Ken. Thanks for having me on. Look forward to talking to you, with you throughout the season. And again, like every fan in the country, I want to play. Let them play. Let's play. And hopefully that's where we're headed.
You got it, Chris. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken.